morning and welcome to the Point for today, Tuesday, July 21st, 2020. Thank you to those of you joining us across our various platforms, Facebook, YouTube, the website, GBN TV, and Hot 98 and Classic 105. We apologize for the late start. We are just ensuring that everything is proper, technologically wise, as we are hosting this morning the Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries, one of the longest serving ministers of agriculture in CARICOM. He's the Minister of Agriculture in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the Honorable Saboto Caesar, making sure I have the pronunciation right. Good morning, Minister.
A pleasant morning to you from St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and morning to all the beautiful people in Grenada and CARICOM.
Thank you very much for facilitating us this morning. Appreciate your time, and we're going to get right into the discussion. Like I highlighted when we started the program, you are one of the longest serving ministers of agriculture in CARICOM. And for somebody who has been in the field for years, let's first start with your overall thoughts on the state of agriculture, not just in SVG, but across the region or across CARICOM. Let's start there.
Agriculture is the backbone of most of the member states in CARICOM. Of course, the tourism sector contributes significantly. And proportionately, there are some member states where tourism contributes more than agriculture. So now, in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, in other member states of CARICOM, there is a history to the agriculture sector. And we know that it is one that is tied very closely to preferential treatment. In these cases, the sugarcane and bananas, and in the cases of Vincent and Grenada, St. Vincent and Grenadines, Grenada, Lucia and Dominica had a thriving banana industry. I know that you remember the days when in St. George's, you used to see those trucks when you have to export. And that was the same thing in Castries, St. Lucia, or St. Vincent, and also in Dominica. However, because of the removal of preferential treatment for the bananas, what you had several members of the OECS that had banana industries had to create a diversification platform for production. And I want to congratulate Grenada for the excellent work that they have done in establishing a spices, condiments and spices industry. Instead of what we did, the spices, because that also was an option. We had some spices, but we went into so it's a lot of dasheen, tanya, edos, yams, and also we invested significantly very early in production. And in recent times, in the last 8 years, we have seen an exponential growth in production of food. So we arguably produce one of the, I should not say, one of the best chocolates in CARICOM. And I also want to thank the government of Grenada for their support. So all in all, in CARICOM, there are member states that have a very large agricultural production platform and address the issue of food security, food safety, exports, and livelihoods. And I want to spend some time on the issue of access and affordability. Because sometimes persons who are into production will see the agricultural sector as a sector where we produce to export. But we are producing significantly in the region for our own consumption. And because of this, we are doing very well as it pertains to food sovereignty. Of course, our food import is high in the member states, particularly. You have some states, because of their topography, because of their geography, they are more inclined for tourism. They will be high importers of agricultural food. I also want to mention, just before something else, that there is an intra-regional trade in CARICOM that I think that we do not speak enough about. For example, between St. Vincent and the Grenadines and Grenada, driving through import of cattle in Grenada and other livestock. And there is also a significant trade where we import a lot of fish and fish products for transshipment from vessels owned by Grenadians. We also import from Grenada for condiments and spices. And there are a lot of persons in St. Vincent and the Grenadines trade honey from Grenada, and also import a lot of spices from Grenada. So I want persons to see that there's a high level of reciprocity and movement with Grenada and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And I am certain that our citizens are benefiting significantly.
In preparing for this morning's program, I came across an article, maybe I would call it an article, and one of the things stated in it, I believe it was said or written by you, that a united approach to regional agriculture is the only way we can keep hope alive. What do you mean by that, or what does that mean?
At this stage of our development as a region, we cannot be insular. We cannot we have to look inwards, looking at the issues that we have to address internally as member states, but we also have to look outwards. In each of the member states, what do you have? A production platform that is varied and different from the other islands. So for example, what is produced on a large scale in Dominica are not the same things which are produced in Grenada. But because of the revised Treaty of Basseterre, we have an economic union. And in that article, what I was basically saying is that we have to begin to appreciate the fact as producers, as policymakers, as citizens, that we are one OECD. And if we need honey than the Grenadines, not because it is produced in Grenada, that we should look at side. Because we have a single economic union and a single platform, it is really an extension of another geographical space within the OECS. And there are persons who are already thinking that way and are embracing that particular trade. For example, in my constituency, there is a young lady who is an exporter of agricultural goods, and she sends to the market in Grenada. Right here in the Grenadines, there are persons throughout the country who have direct links with fishermen in Grenada, and they have an excellent trade ongoing. The owner of the cowbell in Grenada, when he comes to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, persons who see him as a Grenadian, they see him as an extension of a citizen who is basically in the OECS as the whole. So when Jude comes up, Jude goes about in St. Vincent and the Grenadines as if he's just a butcher from St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And this is like when we need our spices, we can come to Grenada, and I know that the persons are already doing it, and we can go from the different producers and we can purchase and have more goods moving. That was the original objective outlined in the revised Treaty of Basseterre. And for example, I am very happy, very welcome to know that I am speaking this morning. I was on a radio in St. Vincent this morning. I'm now speaking to you. And there are young entrepreneurs in Grenada. There are young persons coming back to university, young professionals and technicians and farmers and producers and stakeholders. I don't want you to see Grenada, Martinique, and Caribou as the parameters within which you are operating. The parameters are within the parameters of CARICOM, and have to look outside of the box. And we are welcoming in Thailand, and that you also welcome. I miss my lunch at the Spice Basket. Is it still around?
Yes, it very much is still around. Minister Caesar, at this point, let's take a break and then we're going to come back and continue the discussion as we look at the agriculture sector in the Caribbean. This is To The Point on GBN Classic Hot 98. We'll be right back.
The following are a list of food items to have on hand amidst COVID-19. Perishables like vegetables, fruits, provisions, and eggs. You are advised to stock perishable items to last up to 2 weeks. Non-perishable items including dry goods like cereals, flour, cornmeal, oats, rice, pasta, nuts and nut butters like peanut butter, crackers, canned or frozen meats, ready-to-eat canned meats, powdered or canned milk, dried peas and beans, canned fruits in natural juices, 100% canned fruit juices, and canned vegetables. You can stock non-perishable food items to last up to 1 month. Store bottled or clean drinking water, 1 gallon or more per day per person. If you suffer from a medical condition, have prescribed medications on hand. A message from the Grenada Food and Nutrition Council as we battle COVID-19. The Grenada Food and Nutrition Council remind you to boost your immune system and give yourself a fighting chance against COVID-19. Consume foods that are rich in vitamin C, like fruits and vegetables. For example, oranges, grapefruit, mandarin, lemon, spinach, cabbage, and tomatoes. Vitamin B6 and folic acid that is found in chicken, turkey, fish, grain foods like oats, bread, local provisions, dry beans, and peas. Another immune system booster is vitamin E, found in nuts, corn, sunflower or canola oils, and leafy vegetables like spinach, broccoli, and kale. Iron, zinc, and vitamin D are also important to strengthen your immunity. So try foods like lean meats, eggs, lentils, mackerel, tuna, and jacks. Our local spices, ginger, clove, and turmeric, among others, can help decrease inflammation and support the immune system. Remember to practice safe food handling. A message from the Grenada Food and Nutrition Council, reminding you that a strong immune system is one of the best ways to fight COVID-19.
Welcome back to The Point. We are speaking with Minister of Agriculture on the island, I could call you our sister islands of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the Honorable Saboto Caesar. Minister Caesar, one of the things I wanted to ask you about is the marijuana industry. It's an industry that a lot of people have been saying could mean betterment for countries who get into the business, and there are others who still say we don't need to legalize the sale of marijuana or decriminalize marijuana. Where do you stand for looking at a CARICOM outlook of the marijuana industry?
First of all, I want to, from the onset, that we have to respect the views of every sovereign country. So even though we are a group of islands in the OECS or within CARICOM, I cannot impose my views on other member states, but I would state my position. But I just want to from start by starters, to note that the views of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we are not giving these views to impose on any other member state, but we're just sharing our experience.
Understood.
In St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we decided very early o'clock when we saw what was taking place internationally with cannabis that we were going to be a part of it. So we expressed from day one the political will to establish a modern, medicinal, cannabis industry. And we are well aware, we can't hide from this. St. Vincent and the Grenadines has a very long history where there are traditional cultivators of cannabis in our country. And I think that second to Jamaica, basically, but in the Southern Caribbean, there has been a history in our country where there are traditional cultivators. We saw this as an opportunity for traditional cultivators who were living in the hills in conditions which were not really fit for persons, that we can create a framework and a strategy to incorporate the traditional cultivators into this industry which was emerging internationally. So from day one, the traditional cultivators have been seen as critical stakeholders of the first importance. So unlike some other member states that don't have a large cadre of traditional cultivators who are so mobilized as in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, of course, that will give us an extra push to seek to address some of the issues which are raised by our citizenry, particularly those who are into the traditional cultivation of cannabis. From the onset, as I noted, we did not embrace the issue of setting up an industry outside of one place on a medicinal path. And we decided to broaden our approach in the very embryonic stages of setting up the cannabis industry, to say that what we want to do is to set up a medicinal industry, of which cannabis was going to be one path. So right now in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, what you have is a clear framework, a clear strategy towards setting up in our country and establishing a thriving medicinal and pharmaceutical industry, utilizing a lot of the herbs and spices that we have in the country. So I hope that you're seeing where we are not only talking about cannabis here, but we're talking about a wide array of commodities. Of course, some of the commodities are already on island and some have to be introduced. And what we are doing so far is that we are attracting expertise from across the world. And I need say, I won't call any names, but there's a young lady from Grenada who is playing a very critical role in investing in cannabis right here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So the investors are not only coming from St. Vincent and the Grenadines, they're coming from the sub-region, the region, the persons here from Africa, from North America, mainly Canada, the persons from South America, and a lot of persons from Europe. In fact, there's also someone from Russia who is here working to help us create this sort of framework so that we can have a world-class medicinal industry. So we are also looking at turmeric, moringa, nutmegs, aloe vera, and there are some persons who are even looking at the mushrooms that we have here growing wild for extraction. And we have scientists who are basically coming to St. Vincent and the Grenadines and studying a lot of what we are doing. About 4 months ago, I had the opportunity to visit Ghana. And when I looked at a lot of the plants there in West Africa, and the similarity with the plants that we have here, it's not far-fetched to know where a lot of the plants came from. A lot of the plants that we have in the Caribbean came from South America, when they had the movements of the Amerindians, the Kalinagos. They came from India when we had the period of indentureship, and they came from Africa when we had the transatlantic slave trade. We had a lot of commodities coming across. And it is interesting that in these countries, they are utilizing these commodities to produce a lot of medicine. And there are companies from across the world going to India, going to Africa, and utilizing those commodities to build thriving industries. And we have cannabis in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And we decided to set up a medicinal platform. We are aware that cannabis, if abused, can cause significant human harm. That is not something that we are going to debate. That's not debatable at this point in time. The science is clear on that. And what we are also aware is that there are a lot of young persons in our country, and I'm certain in all the other member states of CARICOM, where at some point in time in their lives, they may partake in utilizing cannabis, and there's no legal framework, and it is an offense. And they are arrested, they're charged, and in all islands, when you have a what you call a police record, meaning you have an offense against you, when you turn up to work at your radio station, no matter how sweet your voice is, if they ask you for a record and you produce that, the owner may say, I do not want someone with a record. So we saw this as a part of the reparatory justice, whereby they are not only embarking upon setting up this framework to make money from the industry through extraction or medicine, but we are linking the traditional cultivators. I have lost family members who participated in the cannabis trade, who went to sea on a vessel and never returned. And that is the story for many, many families on some areas in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And by setting up a full-fledged medicinal industry, what it does is that it creates now a legal pathway whereby persons can come mainstream, participate in production, which is following a clear framework, a clear policy, and they can sleep at home with their children. they can have a license. There are over 300 and something plus traditional cultivators in St. Vincent and the Grenadines who have already been trained to enter the industry. So we have the issue of the incorporation and the involvement of the traditional cultivators. We have the issue of the persons who have criminal the records that we are addressing. And what we are seeing now in St. Vincent and the Grenadines is that there's a ticket system whereby if you are caught with small quantities of cannabis, then you are placed onto an advisor, someone to help you understand and appreciate that cannabis, if abused, can cause negative impacts on the body. Also within the whole context of the discussion, the Rastafari community played a critical role because it is used as a religious sacrament. However, we were guided by international law, and we have and continue to exercise full tolerance to the Rastafari community. And we sat with the Rastafari brothers and sisters and were able to draft a bill, and the bill was taken to Parliament. And this is something that we are going to take up in the not too distant future so that we can work towards enhancing the protection of their rights for religious purposes. But what we did is that we acted within the four corners of international law. And international law basically says that cannabis can only be used or should only be used for medicinal purposes and for research. So we acted within the four corners of the law.
Is the SVG government realizing the profits it envisioned through the marijuana industry?
We have established a medicinal cannabis authority, and the authority has a licensing system where you have to purchase a license once you are an investor, and we basically have a fee of, I think, $100 if you are a traditional cultivator. So basically, the traditional cultivator has an easy entry into the industry. Currently, we are at the the middle of the establishment of this industry. First of all, they put a bill. Secondly, we had the national consultation. Third, we had the passage of the legislation in Parliament. Then you had the establishment of the authority. The authority basically is the regulator. And now, directly to answer your question about the returns, remember the returns are not only in dollars and cents. So we now are at the stage where investors are actually setting up large greenhouses, large shade houses, and some are doing many acres of open field cultivation. So there's job creation. The person's employed. That is a benefit. The technical exchange. We have persons from across the globe, technicians from across the globe, coming to St. Vincent and the Grenadines to bring their knowledge. That is also a significant benefit. We are seeing the importation of a lot of the infrastructure, for example, all the shade houses, and this is good for the revenue at the customs. We also have analyzed the entire value chain that has been established. There are Vincentians who have gone overseas, particularly to Canada and United States of America, to have that technology transfer. So we're seeing where all people are benefiting from the knowledge which has been developed internationally as to how to produce medicinal cannabis. We are also seeing a lot of young persons who hitherto may have been arrested and charged are no longer being arrested and charged. So that's a benefit. So that's why I'm saying the benefits cannot only be in dollars and cents. And because of what has taken place in the medicinal cannabis industry, we are also seeing a lot of persons taking a better look at agriculture, because the production of cannabis is agriculture. And we have been able to broaden our diversification production platform in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And for persons who are aware of what takes place on a cannabis farm, persons the farmer don't only cultivate cannabis, they cultivate also root crops and vegetables. So we are seeing an expansion in general production. And of course, you are seeing a greater integration of the traditional cultivators into mainstream, which means you're living a far less risky life. You are able to work and be a part of a lot of the systems in the society. And this, I must say, is benefiting the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines significantly. Of course, the next stage that we're working on is the establishment of extraction facilities. And there is a thrust by many of the investors to find external markets. So it is a building process. And I am happy that we have come a very long way. And very soon, we will be exploring the ultimate goal, which is to export from St. Vincent and the Grenadines cannabis for medicinal purposes. And we have been able, over the last 2 months, to get to the end stage of the establishment of a platform for patient access. So if you have a prescription, for example, if you go to Canada and you have a prescription from a medical doctor and you come back to the island, you can come to St. Vincent and the Grenadines for medicinal treatment in cannabis. Of course, there is a process where you would have to prove that you're diagnosed, you have to bring your papers, just like if you're doing any other medicine. So I just want to note that it's not only a production, there's not only a production side to it, there's also a patient access side to it. And this ties in nicely to medicinal tourism, which I think is the new frontier, especially since we are in a pandemic. There are a lot of persons who, after this period, will be traveling for medicinal purposes. And we are inviting persons to come to St. Vincent and the Grenadines to participate in our medicinal cannabis industry, whether as producers or as patients. And of course, we're seeing an entire different value chain being established here, whereby you have persons now who are in the medical field, or doctors, the pharmacists, who are going to be integrally involved in this process. And as I've noted earlier, we're not only looking for doctors and pharmacists from St. Vincent and the Grenadines, but if there's somebody who's listening in the sub-region who want to participate and play an activist role in the industry, you can come to St. Vincent and the Grenadines and do
that. Earlier you said you would not, force other islands or really verbally encourage other islands to get into the industry. But what if you were approached? Let's say I am Prime Minister of my own island, and I come to you and I say, Hannah, seize, because we tight. So Hannah sees, I'm thinking about my island getting into the industry. Would you encourage me or not to get into the cannabis industry on my island?
I love the question. And the first thing I would advise, seeing as you have expressed in your instance a political will, if we may say such, the next question is to speak to the people, because it is very important to hear what the citizens they feel. And that's what we did in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We saw what was happening internationally. We got the information on the science, and we ran the science by our medical professionals, and we got a lot of scientific advice that cannabis definitely has medicinal properties which can be explored to establish an industry. So we are past stage one. But when you come up with something like that as a policy, after crafting that policy, you have to now take the policy to the population. And my advice to you would be then to have a broad-based national consultation, because it's not a one-size-fits-all. I could just see, if you have an approach in Grenada, you will be blending spices with cannabis, because I know out of my nutmeg in my drum, every time I feel a pain, I grab for the spice. So what the national consultation will do is that it will bring out that indigenous feel, that feel from within, as to the objections, the appreciations, and a local pathway, because it is very important that when we set up an industry like this, especially an industry using a commodity that has been tabooed, that it has a national buy-in and it has national support. And it is only after you complete that national consultation, because at the end of the day, you have to be respectful for everybody. We have to listen to what all the stakeholders are saying. We spoke to civil society, we spoke to the churches, we spoke to the medical experts, to the police. It was a consultation that was very exciting, and we drew on a lot of medical expertise from outside of St. Vincent and the Grenadines as well, because there are countries which would have traversed that territory. The second thing after the national consultation will be to bring the information together. Of course, this is usually done by the Office of the Attorney General. And whatever framework that you come up with, you cross-reference it with an international legal expert. Because at the end of the day, cannabis is a scheduled drug, and it is being managed and looked at internationally by the International Narcotics Control Board. So you want whatever you do, that it falls within the ambits of international law. Because there are some persons within the country who definitely will state that, okay, well, once it's medicine, I'm okay. Once it's within the ambits of international law, I'm okay. And there are some persons who will say that they would want for the legalization, for the full legalization. So there will be varying views and perspectives. When you complete the accumulation of the information and you would have cross-referenced it with an international legal expert, the next step is really to take it to Parliament. And then after taking it to Parliament, then you have an active select committee period and process, very open and transparent, where all the stakeholders can come, can assist in amending the draft before it goes to the final stages before its enactment. And you ensure that within the legislation that there is protection for your citizens and that your citizens can actively participate in the development of the industry. Now, it's not an easy walk. It's not a walk in the park. It's not something that is going to happen overnight, where you just come and plant some cannabis and then you get millions of dollars. There's a process and there are protocols. And at the end of the day, there are other countries that are producing cannabis. And you have to have an excellent quality because your product is what you're going to sell. It's an extremely competitive market, an extremely competitive industry. And because of that, we have noted in St. Vincent and the Grenadines that if you're speaking about medicine and the production of medicine and the extraction of cannabis, let us speak about not only cannabis, but a wide array of other commodities so that we can have a approach this whole setup. So if I was advising you, I will say to you that whatever the voice of the people says, whatever they say, then with that. And it may not take place, the discussion may not take place in a week or 2 weeks or 2 months, half a year, but it must be an ongoing discussion because I am certain that in every member state, there will be persons who have different sentiments.
All right, I'm taking notes. At this point, we are going to invite comments, questions, queries, concerns from members of our public or viewers and listeners. 435-2041, that's the landline number. You can also pose your questions on the WhatsApp, the GBN Television Facebook page, and the Grenada Broadcasting Network's YouTube channel. In the interest of time, if we can please keep our phone questions to 1 minute or less. That would be greatly appreciated. Let us go to our first caller of the program. Good morning.
Good morning, Citizen Welsh. Greetings. I'll be brief, but I would like to should I use this adverb? Adamantly protest this program this morning. No, that console belongs to GBN, and the editorial policy of GBN belongs to GBN. But this morning was said to be for the members of the opposition of Grenada, with so many things in this here country to talk about. We have a man from another country coming in to tell us how to grow weed. I protest in the name of many, many people in this here country. Have a nice day, will you?
Citizen Rollo, correction, the program is not set aside for what? Opposition. It is set aside for as well as civil society and other members of the public. The program is not about how to grow weed. The program is about agriculture in the Caribbean. So I am sorry if you misinterpreted what the discussion was this morning. We started looking at an overall perception of agriculture in the region, and I asked the marijuana related questions because I have had people ask me about doing a kind of program on marijuana and the possibility in Grenada. If you do not subscribe to marijuana, that is fine. But as SVG, it is legal there. They have an industry going there. I asked the question. So I apologize if you misinterpreted what it was, but that's not what it was. It's not about growing weed. It's about the industry and its benefits. Minister, let me ask a question that I saw on WhatsApp. The question asks, has the legalization of marijuana seen a reduction in illegal drug trafficking and the crimes associated with it in St. Vincent?
So just to make a correction, because some persons sometimes use the word legalization out of context. What we have in St. Vincent is a medicinal cannabis framework.
Thank you for that.
What we have seen in St. Vincent and Grenadines, this framework is a very active participation by persons who hitherto were traditional cultivators. And I must say that we have seen many traditional cultivators. Three things would have happened in recent times. They have come mainstream and they have gone to the Medicinal Cannabis Authority and they have applied for their licenses. So from the time you apply for your license to grow medicinal cannabis, you are in effect moving away from the illicit production of cannabis. So in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, there's still two streams. There's the illicit stream, where if someone decides, I'm not going for a license, I want to do my own thing, I don't want to subscribe to the law, the rules and the regulations, then there is still that illicit stream. But there is the legal stream for medicinal purposes and an entire framework which is constantly monitored. I am aware that there are several major companies working in St. Vincent and the Grenadines with traditional cultivators. So to answer your question about whether there's a reduction in drug trafficking, of course, if these persons are working with legitimate cultivators, then they are being brought mainstream. And what they were doing hitherto, which was considered illicit or illegal, because it is now being governed by the legislation and it is part of the medicinal cannabis framework, then it is legal. To boil it down to the exact figure as to how many persons who before used to export illegally who are now not exporting, well, that is going to be an issue of detection, because it could be that persons are more detected well previously than now. So I can't answer that part of the question, but I can say that I have also seen persons who are traditional cultivators, persons who were seeking to get into the industry. They have now had the opportunity to go even as far as Canada to participate on the Canadian Farm Program, where persons go every year. Of course, persons go from Grenada every year. I saw last week, 15 persons from St. Vincent and the Grenadines to go to Canada on the what we call the fruit picking program. So persons usually do that. But there are persons from St. Vincent and the Grenadines who are now in Canada working with cannabis producers.
Another question, is the topography of SVG a major hindrance to the agriculture or the agriculture production? And what advice would you give to islands with similar topography as it relates to the agriculture industry?
When you have undulating lands and the geography and topography like what we have in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, volcanic, very hilly and mountainous, it doesn't naturally lend itself to mechanization. So if it was flat, then you would have large scale usage of tractors. And when you have this, of course, it reduces your production, your cost of production because of the mechanization. Now, in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we do not have large expanses of flat land. But what we have been able to do is to utilize our terrain for the production of large-scale root crops. And we must also appreciate that when the land is not flat, whilst you may lose a lot on not being able to mechanize easily, the topography lends itself to a lot of hills and valleys. And these valleys form excellent agri-ecological zones that can grow food year-round. So let's compare it. I won't call the name of a very flat island, but if you have a very, very flat island and you have a drought, then you may have 98% of the farmers affected. But if you have a mountainous island, because of the number of valleys, of course, you will have a lot of these valleys protected. Of course, the drought would affect more the coastal areas. So it has been a negative in terms of we have not been able to compete with many of the countries and islands that are flatter and can save a lot because of the reduced cost of production. But what we have been able to do is to go into those commodities that we can easily farm on our terrain. So for example, you can plant cocoa in St. Vincent and Grenadines on some of our slopes and our hillsides. The time that it will take you in some of the flatter areas in Grenada to reap the cocoa, it will take longer in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and it will increase the cost of production. We have been able to maneuver the landscape, and I am satisfied that we have one of the most diversified production platforms in CARICOM, right here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And that is creating a lot of assistance in terms of livelihoods, food security, and food sovereignty.
All right, let's go back to the phone lines. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, Blossom.
Morning, go ahead, please.
Good morning, Blossom. Good morning to Minister. Yes, I don't know why the government in Grenada dragging their foot so much about getting the marijuana things together, because a lot of young people could be employed, and they set it up just as how St. Vincent set it up, because the young lady in Grenada, some people I met, and the people came to me, and they wasn't doing it in Grenada. And I introduced St. Vincent, and they go to St. Vincent, and they in St. Vincent. And that same young lady, she go to Jamaica, she go to different places and look at the system and so on, the same lady from Grenada. You understand? So I know that we could do it and we could do good at St. Vincent, because we have good soil like St. Vincent. So I know we could do good. And a lot of people will be employed, and the monies that they will be working for a day for planting the marijuana would be a lot, because it's a big industry, very, very big industry. So I hope the Kit Mitchell government could look and do something about it. All right? Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Thank you, caller. You do the same. Mr. Caesar?
Yes. Well, as I noted, that it is an issue that will have to be addressed by the people. And I wish to stay there.
All right. What do you say to countries who give lip service to agriculture or don't promote their products on the outside market, such as the USA? For example, I have gone to Chinese vegetable stores and find products from St. Vincent, such as breadfruit and mangoes, just to name a few. Can you tell us what St. Vincent did to make that a reality?
Yes. Now, as a policy maker, and policymakers throughout the region in agriculture, everyone would make an individual assessment. And as I have noted, I am not aware of what will be discussed when that assessment is being made. And a country is usually placed on a developmental trajectory based on the assessment of the policymakers. In St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we have always seen both agriculture and tourism as key drivers. And I know that there are some jurisdictions, some places around the world, where they have chose one over the other. And more attention is being placed either in agriculture or more attention is being placed in tourism. Some persons also place a lot of attention at the expense of some of the other sectors into foreign services, the offshore sector and offshore services, and the services sector. We believe, and we have in St. Vincent and the Grenadines as a part of our production DNA, the importance of agriculture and the production in the agriculture sector. And it has caused for a lot of creativity. We have always tried to link up local producers with international markets. With the decline in banana production, particularly because of climate change and the removal of the preferential treatment, we have worked with Vincentians in the diaspora, whether it's in London, New York, Miami, in Toronto, Montreal, to be agents to import a lot of the commodities that we produce here. And we have a thriving market right in CARICOM because a lot of our goods will go to Trinidad and Tobago on a weekly basis. And my encouragement, as I answer the question in a nutshell, is for us to see the sub-region, the OECS production platform as one. Because when I see, whenever I go to a market in Brooklyn and I see goods there from Grenada, I see it as a good from my sister island. I purchase it. Of course, if there's a Vinci good there, I will support my own. Grenada is also a product from Grenada, is also a product from the OECS, and that is how I really think that moving forward in advancing our production and productivity, that we have to begin to see things that way. And I really want for more entrepreneurs in St. Vincent and the Grenadines to go to Grenada, assess what is being produced in Grenada, because you may actually realize that you could get a better quality good out of Grenada and it can be produced more efficiently. And let us bring more of those goods to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And let us see likewise take place where Grenadians can feel very freely to come to St. Vincent and the Grenadines to have that trade, that return trade between our islands. And this goes for all the member states of the OECS and all the member states of CARICOM.
Let's take this final caller. Good morning, caller.
Hi, good morning, Blossom, and to your followers and to your guests. 2 quick points. First of all, marijuana has medicinal value, but it's not a food. Vincentians probably are feeding themselves and many other people, so if they want to go into something else, fine. In Grenada, we have not been able even to feed ourselves. So this whole idea of not being able to feed yourself, but branching off into something which has positive and some very negative implications to it, to me, it's craziness. Why not focus on feeding ourselves? And we can do it. We don't have to be reinventing the wheel. Let's try to feed ourselves in Grenada first. Secondly, we are using words loosely in the region. Farming, backyard gardening is not farming. And farming is not agriculture. Neither is agriculture agribusiness. And unless we understand what these terms mean, and we see the importance of farming commercially and going into value added and creating agribusinesses, we are spinning top in mud. That's what I would say. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, caller. Minister, care to respond?
Yes, just to address the issue raised by the caller in brief. And as again, I'm staying throughout this program that I'm speaking from my vantage point, and I'm not imposing anything on any island. But from the vantage point of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, there's nothing that stops us from having food security, but also having a medicinal cannabis industry. In fact, in our legislation and in the licensing regime, there is a column there where we actually have the investors being mandated that they also have to invest in the production of food. So whilst the caller is saying that there may be an either-or approach in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and I'm certain persons who are listening who are very au fait with the licensing regime. If you're an investor coming in, even though you have paid your license, there's also a food security fee that you have to also pay after 1 year of production so that you can assist in food security and food sovereignty.
As we wrap up, Minister Caesar, any final words this morning to share with your counterparts here in Grenada?
I want to encourage greater integration between St. Vincent and the Grenadines and the stakeholder producers in Grenada, Petit Martinique, and Carriacou. And integration as it pertains to cross-border investment. If there's an investor in St. Vincent and the Grenadines who wants to go to invest in Grenada, if there is a purchaser in Grenada who wants to purchase in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, if there is a technician in St. Vincent who wants to set up both in St. Vincent and Grenada, I think that that is the way forward. And it must not only be for the services sector, but we must also see that taking place in agriculture. In St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we are very grateful for what we have received from the government and people of Grenada, all the spice plants that we usually get from time to time, the clove, the nutmegs, the cocoa. And we are very happy that we can be of assistance to the people of Grenada in terms of working on an export platform where we export livestock. And I know that from time to time we will send down a banana plant, we will send down plants for crops. And we need to strengthen that bond, strengthen that relationship between the producers and St. Vincent and Grenadines and Grenada, Martinique and Carriacou. We have created basically a model. And I would like to see that this model is out to St. Lucia, to Dominica, and let us have meaningful trade in agriculture, and let us see the OCS for what it really is, a single economic union and a single market. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister Caesar, for being our guest this morning. Appreciate your time. You have yourself a good day. Stay safe in SVG.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. That was Minister of Agriculture of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the Honorable Saboto Caesar. We thank him once again for being our guest. And that's the end of the program and the end of my time this morning. Thank you so much for viewing, listening, and participating. Remember, tomorrow, God willing, Wednesday, we are hosting Prime Minister, the Honorable Dr. the Right Honorable Keith Mitchell. He will be our guest tomorrow. It would be a very tight interview tomorrow, please the Lord, because of his time constraints. So in the meantime, I would suggest those of you who may have questions for the Prime Minister, you send them on the WhatsApp now, between now and tomorrow, God willing, so that once we get the program started, we can ask them with the quickness in the interest of time. Joseph is up next with Mid-Morning Buzz. He'll take you through midday. Thank you once again for participating. I'll be back with you tomorrow, God willing. Have yourselves a very blessed Tuesday.